PlayStation 5 is just around the corner. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the games you won't want to miss. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart looks set to become a real showcase for the potential of the PlayStation 5. Taking advantage of the new hardware setup, players will be taking up the role of Ratchet as you seamlessly travel from world to world and encounter an array of enemies and NPCs that help bring each densely populated environment to life. With the introduction of several new mechanics such as the Rift Tether, it will now be possible to quite literally teleport yourself throughout each environment, which has untold possibilities for both combat and traversal, and if the several trailers are anything to go by, it is shaping up to be one of the most immersive and deepest entries in the series. A huge amount of weapons and options are at your disposal, a leveling up system that seems to allow players to improve Ratchet and his abilities over time, and of course the visuals that are just quite simply breathtaking. I've always had a special place for this series ever since its inception on the PlayStation 2 in 2002. There's no word when it's coming out yet, just a promise of a launch window release, which hopefully means we'll see it before the end of the year. I've always been a huge fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise. I can't really say the same for Ubisoft as a company for obvious reasons, but as the series has unfolded, there is no denying that its narrative and premise has continually got further and further away from what initially drew myself and many others to it. That all looks set to change with Darby McDevitt once again taking the reins and hopefully steering the story in a direction that will satisfy both legacy fans and newcomers alike. The game sees us taking on the role of one of two Vikings as they travel to the English countryside, which promises to encompass the many aspects of life common within the time period. The gameplay seems to keep everything that was introduced with Odyssey intact, branching storylines, a multitude of side quests and activities that flesh out the world, and of course combat, which has become my main gripe with the series as of late. Thankfully though, the team have mentioned that there will be more of an emphasis upon stealth, and if everything goes well, we could have a real return to form on our hands. The latest installment in the Resident Evil franchise looks to carry on very much in the same vein as the previous one, with the action once again taking place from a first-person perspective, but instead of focusing on a contained environment like the Baker's family home, it is instead opening up to a much larger location in the form of a village set in Romania. The parallels with Resident Evil 4 are quite obvious, with an ominous castle also being teased throughout the various trailers that have dropped, as well as a merchant which hopefully will once again allow players to exchange currency for items and weapons. Enemies look to be far deadlier than in number 7, with them taking on the characteristics of a werewolf, which will become a welcome change to the somewhat cumbersome moulded enemies of the past. With Chris Redfield making an appearance and looking to be front and center when it comes to the game's narrative, it looks like Resident Evil Village is setting up to be one for longtime fans, and if all goes to plan, hopefully we'll have another success on our hands. Coming off the huge success of Insomniac's previous work with the Spider-Man franchise, comes a spin-off starring Miles Morales. Set in New York once again and taking place after the events of the previous game, Peter Parker has been successful in training Miles, with the game set to deal with the player defending Harlem from a gang war between the Roxxon Energy Corporation and a high-tech group of criminals led by the Tinkerer. To be fair, it looks to be more of the same, which in no way is a bad thing. You can expect an immense environment in which to explore, a deep and well-implemented combat system, and of course a diverse amount of quests to undertake as you swing your way through the city. If Marvel's Spider-Man is anything to go by, it looks like this spin-off is going to be one to add to your list. After the huge success of Horizon Zero Dawn, it makes sense that Guerrilla Games would want to return to the world they created. It looks like we will once again be taking on the fight as Aloy, with a whole new region to explore and get familiar with, this time leaving the East Coast behind and heading west to explore the ruins of America and ultimately unravel more of the secrets that the harsh and unforgiving world of Horizon holds. Judging by the trailer, there are several new aspects to the gameplay in place, the biggest inclusion being that underwater exploration now seems like it's going to to be included. This aspect has the potential to not only introduce more mechanical beasts to overcome, but new gameplay possibilities as well. I for one am extremely excited to see where Guerrilla Games will take the series with this installment, but knowing the narrative beats and how much was revealed about the several aspects that comprise the world, it might be a tall order to be able to surpass it. Only time will tell if Aloy's next adventure will have the same impact as her debut. Kena Bridge of Spirits is a game that took me completely by surprise upon its unveiling. It's an action-adventure that looks to take various aspects from several franchises and mix them up into something it can call its own, mainly Zelda and Pikmin, if the exploration, combat and use of an army of little critters known as the Rot are anything to go by. According to the synopsis, it looks like the adventure will revolve around rebuilding the world after a great tragedy struck it in the past. As Kena, you will help those who have yet to pass on to the other side, and are forever trapped between worlds until her intervention. The premise sounds incredibly intriguing, as well as the combat, which in all honesty looks like the real star of the show. At the center of it lies Kena's staff, that has the ability to transform into several different weapons, which will all be beholden to an upgrade system. It also allows for close quarters combat with light, heavy and charged attacks, with the group of companions known as the Rot also playing a role in taking on enemies. They'll be able to move objects, distract enemies and take on different forms that will all help you progress. I for one was taken aback by Kena Bridge of Spirits, and in all honesty it looks like it's shaping up to be something unforgettable. After the disappointing release of Gran Turismo Sport, the series is finally returning to what it does best, by offering one of the most in-depth and rewarding simulation modes that fans have been clamoring for since the last mainline installment. In an ideal world, hopefully the 7th iteration will include the various features that made up Sport as well. As you would expect, visually Gran Turismo 7 is shaping up to be nothing short of stunning. We can expect that same attention to detail that has made the series synonymous with the term the real driving simulator, such as a handling model that presents true-to-life physics at its center and a range of vehicles that all manage to feel unique and true to their real-life counterparts once on the track. There is no word on when we will actually get our hands on the game, just speculation of a launch window release, so hopefully by the time Christmas comes around we'll be playing the next installment in a franchise that has consistently helped define each PlayStation console. Perhaps the most requested and anticipated remake of all time is finally making its way to us. Demon's Souls originally released on the PlayStation 3 and in its own right was an incredible experience, but due to the several technical limitations of the time, it never really managed to fully release its potential on the system. Thanks to Bluepoint Games, it is now being reborn for the next generation and is set to improve upon and even surpass nearly every aspect of the original. As you would expect, it's going to be a totally unforgiving experience. Like most games in the series, it will likely have the potential to break your soul, due to the sheer level of difficulty it is bound to offer. Once you master and overcome the insanely deep learning curve though, it is bound to shine just as much as the previous games have over the course of the last 2 generations. Not much is currently known about the next installment in the God of War franchise, but if the PlayStation 4 reboot is anything to go by, it will be nothing short of incredible. It looks like it is set to pick up around 3 years after the events of the previous journey, if the secret ending is anything to go by, where Thor makes his entrance looking for bloody revenge for the death of his sons. After the revelations that put both Kratos and his son's relationship in the balance, how will the journey unfold, with Atreus now potentially being more powerful than his father? Regardless of the game's plot, I know what we can expect: an array of new and enormous enemies to overcome, advanced combat abilities and techniques to master, and of course the connection between father and son at the center of it all. I for one cannot wait to see how it all unfolds. During the most recent PlayStation 5 showcase, Square Enix dropped a literal nuclear bomb and revealed that Final Fantasy XVI would be making its way to the console. It looks to be making a return to a more medieval fantasy-styled setting, something we haven't seen for quite some time from the mainline series, which in all honesty has got me insanely excited. Judging by the trailer, combat will once again be presented in real time, a lot like 15, and in my opinion this isn't a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, I would have loved to have seen a system like what was presented in 7 Remake, which allows the player to pause the action and make decisions, but I was a fan of 15's combat as well, so if it's all out action, I'll still be happy. Now the game is directed by Hiroshi Takai, who was heavily involved with the 2 online installments in the franchise, so we can expect some crossover, and with the several power-ups and abilities we can already see in the trailer, this seems to ring true already. Well, that does it for today's video. Don't forget to hit subscribe to stay up to date on future videos, and as always, thanks for watching.